So, you want to build a headboard? Well, let me show you what I made. Before we get started, I want to make a couple of notes and suggestions here. One of the things you want to understand is this is a frame, and the material I chose for my headboard, the actual fabric of my headboard, can easily be altered. You can use just about anything you want, and you'll see how this sort of comes together all the way through the video. So watch it all the way through and you'll kind of understand that you can pick and choose various materials to use. You can make this either a stand on the floor type like I did, where my bed just rests against it. You can make it hanging. You can adjust the size. You can make it twin, queen, king, whatever you want. When you make it in the bigger sizes, queen and king, there are a few things you're going to need to make a note of, and you'll see that in the video. And again, you can always scrub back to the video and see whatever you want to see. I'll try and cover everything, and I'll try and do it as quickly as I can. I know you probably want to get started making your headboard. So here we go. Let's start out with the tools. Now these tools, keep in mind, are going to vary a little bit depending on the material you use. So I'm laying out some tools that I used, and it's based on what I used for my fabric or my material for the back of the headboard. And I chose indoor-outdoor carpet for a couple of reasons, and you'll know those reasons as we go along. You're going to need basic tools, nothing really out of the ordinary, except for maybe the tubing cutter, which most people don't have. But you'll need a sharp object. So I have a couple of different size awls that you punch holes within different materials, or some kind of punch, something with a sharp end that you can punch a 1/4 inch hole through various fabrics and materials. And again, this depends on what you choose. You're going to need a screwdriver. It's either going to be a Phillips or a flathead. And you also may need an Allen key, depending on the hardware choice you make. And again, we will get to that and you'll see why. Hot melt glue gun. Again, this is optional depending on the material you choose. You're also going to need a drill. You can either use a drill press because it drills a straight square hole straight through material. And you don't have to worry about being at an angle, which is one of the things that you can go wrong with using hand drills if you're not careful. You're going to need a way to cut the wood. It's either a wood saw or, again, where you buy the wood may give you the opportunity, or they may be able to cut it for you. You're going to need something to cut the metal tubing. And again, this is where the preferred method that I prefer is a tubing cutter, because it cuts square, cuts clean edge, it's done, and you can cut much more accurately than you can with a hacksaw, although the job can be done with a hacksaw, or it can be done with a chop saw if you have one with a metal blade. That's another option. And you're going to need a hammer. Okay, so let's move to the materials, and they are, in my case, we're looking at some indoor-outdoor carpet. Now this comes 6 feet wide, and that's wide enough for the queen bed. You would have to either get the 12 or run it a different direction for a king, and that's again if you wanted to use this material to accomplish a king headboard. I chose for my 2x2, they're called 2x2s, but actually they're 1.5 by 1.5, and I bought the premium because I knew I was going to either stain it or paint it, and I wasn't quite sure at this point until I decided to paint it. But this is the clean stuff. It's a little more expensive, but again, it's well worth it. It's straight, it's good, it makes a much better finish. You're going to spend $5 or $6 more to have it versus the junky 2x2s. You're just better off if you're going to do that. Now, you could use the junky 2x2s if you're going to upholster your wood frame piece, and you can do that. You're going to need one 10-foot, that's an 8-foot by the way, you're going to need one 10-foot piece of electrical conduit. This is very cheap steel. Again, you buy it at the same place, Home Depot, as you buy the wood and the carpet. I bought all 3 of these items at Home Depot. You're going to need a 10-foot for a queen. You're going to need 2 10s for a king. So just keep that in mind. This is again for a queen build. Different size, obviously, than the king. You're going to need fasteners. And you're going to need these things called inserts. These are what go into the tubing, and this is what allows you to bolt the tubing up. These are one-way inserts. You pound them in. They don't come back out because they have these tapered, hardened fingers on 2 levels on them, and you'll see how I put them in, what I use to install them in the tubing. Now, I have lots of these because I built lots of furniture this way. I decided to build a headboard. This is the first time I ever made a headboard out of this type of construction, but I've built just about anything you can make in furniture out of this system. So I have lots of these inserts. You can buy these at Home Depot. I've seen them there at different Home Depots. I'm not sure every Home Depot carries them, but you can get them online as well. Now, the bolts I used, again, I have them. They were really designed for 3/4 material, not 1.5 inch. So actually, in my build, I had to countersink them down in, but you could use any 1/4-20 bolt screw you want. Flathead, round head, hex head, anything you want. You can countersink, not countersink. That all depends on you, what you're going to do, if you're going to paint, finish, how you're going to do that. And then you can always, if you do countersink, you can plug the holes with various size dowels depending on what size the head and washer you used on your belt, on your countersink. And again, I'll show you that as we move along. You're also going to need some shot cord. I bought this shot cord at REI. It's very inexpensive. I think it's 28 cents a foot. I bought more than I needed because I didn't know how much I was going to need. I took a rough estimate of how many stringings I was going to use and kind of just said, something for 28 cents a foot, I bought a little more. But you probably only need 8 feet at the end of the day. Never hurts to have a couple more feet. It's not expensive enough to worry about. And this is 1/4 inch is what I bought. You're going to need 3 dowels. These are 3/8 of an inch. And the reason you need 3 is because you have to extend 2 of them. And that's because dowels come 48 inches in this size. You can get a 1/2 inch dowel in some places at, I think, 6 feet. But these are 4s, and they're easy enough to put together, and I'll show you how that's done as we move along. In fact, that's all the materials you're going to need outside of stain or paint, whatever you're going to do to finish your wood. So let's move to putting our dowels together. So basically, you're starting out with something like that, and this is how I determined how long I want them. I put 1 dowel on the inside of my 2x2 on one end, and then the other on this end. I made a pencil mark, and that gave me the length that I needed to cut off. And then I joined them together using a finishing nail. Now, I did nothing with any accuracy here because I put many dowels together, and there's this little trick that works really well. Drill your hole, get it as close as you can to the center, drill it bigger than your shaft on your finishing nail. In fact, just match up the size that's on the little bit larger size of the finishing nail. This way you don't have to cut the nail down or do anything like that. And then what happens is even if you're off a little bit on your center of your hole, when you start to put this together, put the glue in it and everything, and you stick it together, you can rotate the two until they match up. And they seem to always match up. So it's a great little trick. Now, I got pretty close with the center of my hole because I've done it enough times, and it's not hard to get close. And again, if you're close on one side, close on the other, by the time you rotate them around, they match up perfectly. Now, this is something you don't see. This goes into a pocket on your material, and I'll explain why you do this as we move along. So it's not cosmetic. Even if you don't get it perfect, you're not going to see it. It's not going to make a bit of difference. All you want is the structural support of it. You're going to need to cut your wood. I have a number of different tools to do that with, so I cut mine, and I cut it directly in half, gave me 2 40-inch pieces, and that was exactly the measurement of the height that I wanted. And then here we have tubing. I stuck it in my little vise clamp to my table, and I ran my tubing cutter around it, and that's really the ultimate way. Now, I do have these tools. Tubing cutters are not common tools that most people have in their garage, so hacksaw may be the next best thing, or possibly borrow a tubing cutter from a friend if you know one who has one. But that's the preferred method for cutting the tubing. And then this is for the very top hole, so you'll need to get a good center on it, and this is the way you do it. Just measuring, make an exact square, and then corner to corner, and that gives you where you want to drill that hole. And again, just as a note, using a hand drill, just make sure you drill the hole through as straight as you can. You don't want it off at an angle. It'll make for a very bad build, and if you get it too far of an angle, you're going to have to throw your material away. Even having a friend there to look around and make sure that you have it straight up and down and pretty much right angle. And there's some other tricks you can use. You can put a good squared cut piece of wood against it, like your other piece of wood that you have at the time. Put that right at that cross point, and then rest your drill on it, and that way you have one of the angles completely straight. That's another way to do it. There's quite a few methods to keeping your drill bit straight. You can make a little fixture to keep the drill bit straight, but make sure you try and get it as straight as possible. Once you do that, you'll drill the hole down further for your down bar, and I'm going to show you what this looks like in a couple of seconds here of what the finished framework looks like. So I'm just going to move to pressing in the inserts. So there's the end of the tubing, there's the insert. I use a bolt long enough to keep my fingers away from that insert because I have pinched my fingers pounding these things in. You want to give it a good whack to get it started. It never hurts to have a friend hold the tubing, but I did this strictly by just putting pressure on the insert and hammering down. If you go crooked, you can always tap the insert side to side with your bolt to get it straight and then continue down. Once the second set of locks are starting to go in, it should straighten out pretty well on its own, but again, you can tap it side to side to get it straight. There's the top hole. That's what it looks like on mine. Remember, I had to countersink because my bolts weren't long enough to reach through. They were really the length made for a 3/4 inch material, plywood or MDF. Okay, so here's what your frame looks like. That's it. You got your top bar, your bottom bar, and your two sides. Just a simple frame. You're going to stretch your material over those two bars, and we'll get to that right now. But first we're going to cut the material, so you want to make sure that it's square. Just get a good cut on it. Remember, you're measuring on the inside of your two boards to cut your material. And then you're going to take it, put it on the bench like that, wrap it around, and you want your material to be about 4 inches apart once you've wrapped it around the two poles. Now it's going to be further than that once you make the pockets on the ends of that material right there. Making the pockets looks like this. The reason I used hot melt glue is because I have a hot melt glue gun and I just thought it would work the best. But what I found out is that hot melt glue absorbs into indoor-outdoor carpet quite good because indoor-outdoor carpet is quite porous, and that it's made that way as purposely because it needs to dry out if you use it outdoors, so it has a lot of air going through it. So my first bead, once I went to press it together, just sort of pressed through the material. And so what I ended up doing after a few inches, I said, you know something, I'm going to lay down a bead of hot melt glue all the way down on both sides of what I'm going to stick together. Let it dry, let it get cold and hard, and then I'll put my glue bead, the one that's going to stick on top of it, and that just worked perfectly. I ended up accomplishing the pocket quite easily. And then there's the finished pocket. So that's what it looks like on the end. I used a couple of weights just to help me hold it down as I was doing my gluing work. So if you're building this for a queen or a king, now I'm not sure on a twin whether you'll need this inside board, but you will need it on a king or a queen because the bungee really puts a lot of pressure on the material, and that's on purpose because you want to pull this material tight. You're making the material into a trampoline in a sense, and I did that purposely because I wanted to eliminate having padding in my headboard. One more thing to buy because I tried to keep this build at or around 35 bucks, and I did. So I didn't buy any foam. It wasn't something else I had to go get and pay for. I did have this stick, but you can buy these 1x2s at Home Depot. I think the 6-footers are only 89 cents or 99 cents. So they're really cheap to get that board. Now I made it about a 1/16 of an inch wider or longer than the span between my two tubes. And that's just to put some pressure on it and to hold it in place. I didn't glue it, I didn't screw it, I didn't do anything to it, and you don't have to. It's just there to keep the two bars from pulling themselves together with the bungee. So moving on, that's what the back is going to look like when you're done. And this is what the bungee cord is used for, is to pull both sides together tight around the tubes. And then you can see why I use the dowels down those two pockets, because you would have to put you'd have to put so many stitches in where the dowel acts as a brace against any pulling in one particular point or another. It all pulls together. So it made it even, and it made it clean, and it made it smooth on the other side where you want your headboard, what's basically facing your bed. And there's just a shot of me punching the holes with the L to get through, and then I just tied a knot on the end of mine. Was plenty good to hold it in. If you're using some material that's not as tough as indoor-outdoor carpet. You may just have to tie it around your dowel, and that is going to be sufficient to hold it. Now, I just used a 4-inch span, which dropped to an 8 on the other side and back to 4, and that type of thing, and that's how I got my spans across, which worked out perfectly. I had done some things like this before, so I kind of had an idea of how far apart I needed them to get a good even pull on both sides. I strung it through all the way down first, so I did it like tying a shoe, and then I went back and put my tension on it, and probably I'm at about 50%, so I had additional 50% stretch. So if you had a foot, you're at 18 inches by pulling it. And that's how I ended up with more material than I needed when I bought it, because I didn't know what my pull strength was going to be. And you'll figure that out. It's going to vary from material to material and how tight you want it on the other side. I wanted mine really tight, again, because I wanted it to be like a trampoline on the other side, where if you lean up against it, it's got plenty of spring to it just to constantly be nice and straight and constantly pulled straight. So there's what it looks like done. That's it. I chose to paint black. As you can see, my 2 side rails. I like the combination of the black and gray because you saw the picture of my headboard in the beginning where all my bedding is black. I used a bit of the spare material to back my wood that leans up against the wall in my baseboard, and that keeps everything from scratching and getting damaged, my wall and baseboard. I used it on the top and the bottom. You saw this in the picture. You actually saw the extra piece of carpet that goes over. But you didn't see why I did that, so I'm going to show you why I did it. I took an extra piece that I had left over, and I made this little strip, 5 inches, and it wrapped around. And I just held it in place in the back. I pulled it tight and held it in place with 2 Velcro strips. Now, I'll make this note to you here. This indoor-outdoor carpet is actually identical to the loop side of Velcro. Not the hook side, but the loop side. The loop side is what the hook side hooks into. So these are looped stitches that make this carpet up. And it actually works better than the loop side of the actual Velcro loop. So I did that to hold this in place, and there's a reason I put this piece on as we move forward, and I'll show you that I took the hook side with some sticky back and I stuck a little piece on the back of all my remotes. And now I just hang my remotes down the center of the headboard. And it works just beautifully. Because now, no matter what side who's ever sleeping on, they both have access to the remotes versus having somebody handing the remote from their end table over or reaching over. So the remotes are there right in the middle. It works perfect. They never get lost. And I thought of this when I started, and it ended up working out better than I thought when I first started out designing the thing. So it may not work for everybody, but I like it. Now, the reason I use this separate piece of material versus hooking them directly to the headboard is that if you've ever used Velcro long enough, you know that it eventually starts to fray the loop side with the hook, because the hook is made from different material than the loop, and it's just not, the loop is so much more fragile. So every time you pull it off, it kind of rips a little bit and rips a little bit. And I didn't want to do that to the headboard, so I used the strip because I can always change the strip out. And it also, aesthetically, nicely broke up the headboard a bit. It's got a bit of design to it, so I like that too. It worked out both ways. So I'm going to finish with just showing you some various headboards with different materials on them so you get an idea what you can do in regards to using different fabrics and materials. I hope you loved the video. I hope it helps. Maybe you can get some ideas from it and you can reconfigure. Remember, you can make this basically a hanging one, just eliminate the legs, do the same system, and just hang it on the wall. Because the wood is wide enough, it will bolt to the brackets on the bottom of a rack that you get with the wheels and stuff for your box spring. So just get that dimension, make your headboard that wide, and you can bolt it right to that rack. That's another way to do it. I just wanted to leave mine loose and let the bed hold it in place, and it worked out just great. So here's the ideas, so maybe it'll get your head working, and you might find that there's some material that you want to just have or match up to your bedding or your room, and you can find that material and just stretch it around just like I did with the indoor-outdoor carpet. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful, and just have a great one. And don't forget, build something.